Hi, I'm Laura,
Hi, I'm Deanne.
And I am Philippe.
and welcome to our Lyman book club. We are reading The Disorderly Knights by Dorothy Dunnett, and we are on part 3, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Philippe is going to lead us through this discussion. Before we dive in, any overall comments on these chapters you guys want to share?
I really enjoyed them. Like, it was nice to not have life and death stakes for a little bit. It was just like the stakes were much lower in these chapters, but they were really enjoyable to read. I thought we got to see a lot of Lyman just like domestically, which I really liked. Um, yeah, it was good.
Lyman terrifying children.
Yeah. There's a lot that happens in these chapters, and I don't really want to mention it now because we'll get into it. But yeah, I agree. I like the return to Scotland. I like catching up with characters from the first book,
Mhm.
even though it seems Dorothy Dunnett is slowly trying to kill everybody that was in the
I
first book.
know.
We'll get to that.
I was
Um, yeah. The whole St. Mary's thing seems like such a natural progression for Lyman as a character. Uh, I'm not I'm not at all surprised by it, and it answers that question that we had last time about what decision did he make. At least I think it does. I think that's the decision that he made. So
Mhm.
I don't think that's the decision that he
It's
made.
like, I don't know if that's a decision because that we've
part of
known
it.
that before. We knew he was gonna raise an army, and I feel like whatever decision he made, we don't know what it is.
I
Yeah.
think it's part of it.
But
We'll
yeah,
see.
I like this whole army thing. It's fun to see like it's just fun to see Lyman being super competent, you know, like gathering all these competent people together and doing a thing and yeah.
It's fun seeing him super confident. He's also incredibly snarky and funny in these chapters. In a mean way, in like a little bit of like a anti-hero-ish way, but
Yeah,
like
there was a couple of places where I was like, "Ooh, is that the wisest choice?" Yeah,
it's Lyman, so no, it's not the wisest
not
choice.
the wisest choice. Um, yeah, he could definitely make his life a lot easier if he was just held off on the snark a little bit.
I think Sevilla pretty much explains it. You know, he's upset about Tom's death and he's taking it out on the people around him. And there's other stuff going on too.
Yeah.
All right, should we dive in?
So, chapter 1 of the second part of the book, Nettles in Winter. I'll just do a quick overview of sort of the first half of this chapter. So we learn right away that Tom Erskine has died of the sweating sickness, which is sad. On his deathbed, he sort of tells Philippa some sort of secret, which I like this mystery, and we'll get into that. Um, then Trotty Luckup, who we met earlier, is called in to sort of help him, and she's the one that tells him the secret, and then he tells it to Philippa before he dies, and then Trotty Luckup is murdered as she leaves the castle. Um, so, yeah, Tom Erskine on his deathbed tells Philippa one thing for his wife Margaret and one thing for Lymond, and because Philippa hates Lymond so much, she's just not going to tell him the secret. So that's sort of what happens in the first part of this.
Oh my god, you guys, what's the secret? What could it be?
I have some theories. I like that there's this mystery. In fact, there's two mysteries now, because it's whatever secret Tom Erskine told Philippa, and it's also who killed Trotty Luckup. And I actually think that they are related.
Oh yeah, totally. I think Charlie Luckup was killed because of the secret.
Yes, absolutely.
Otherwise, what? Why?
And since the only time we've seen Trotty Luckup was in the beginning of the book when she came to sort of help cure Joleta's mysterious illness, I definitely think it has something to do with Joleta or Gabriel. Maybe on when Joleta was sick, she said something to Trotty about Gabriel. I don't know. But I think it lies something in that realm.
Hmm,
So,
that's a good guess. I
yeah.
have no idea.
Do you have any
Yeah.
guesses?
I don't think we know yet what it could be.
No, I mean, other than she's a midwife, so she's privy to a lot of like health, like she's privy to a lot of baby information probably, but she's also privy to like things people say on their deathbeds or sick beds or when they're, out of their mind from delirium or whatever. So it could be a lot of things. I like the idea that it maybe has something that Joleta might have spilled something. I wasn't thinking about that. And I like that idea, but who knows?
Well, another possibility is it's about Joleta and it's about why she suddenly got sick. If she actually did get sick, it might have just been some sort of ruse and Trotty Luck up knows about it.
I mean, the whole thing that Philippa says about how it will humiliate Lyman, like if Lyman doesn't know about it, it will humiliate Lyman.
Yeah.
So it could be like some nefarious plot on Graham and Joleta's part that Joleta spilled. Or it could have something more to do with Lyman. Like I thought it might have something to do with the whole parentage thing because of like Lyman and Richard's legitimacy issue. Because if Trotty Luckup is, knows about baby stuff, maybe, I don't know.
Could be.
It depends on how long she's been around, and she seems to. Like, is she traveling all over the country? If she was in Floss Valley and then now she's at Bogal, like, they're not that close together, right? So I was like, this midwife gets around. Or nurse. But anyway. Yeah. So I don't know.
Then who killed her?
Yeah.
See, I was thinking that it was Gabriel because I thought maybe the secret had something to do with him. And I don't think it's a far reach to think that he has some sort of agent watching over Joleta in Scotland, other than Madame Donati. But we find out in a later chapter that Gabriel comes from France on the Queen Dowager's ships, and that would feasibly put him outside of Scotland right now. So
yeah, I didn't think that was possible.
I was thinking it was until I read that later. I was like, oh, well, that cheats my theory on Gabriel.
Yeah, I think that's kind of why I wasn't thinking it was a Gabriel or Joleta secret because Gabriel isn't around unless Joleta arranged for it, which I mean, I wouldn't put it past her.
Well, we do find out she's
that girl is
wicked little troll.
Like,
oh God,
she's trouble, and she was there. I mean, she's at the scene, you know. So, I mean, obviously she shows up later, but she does arrive on scene, which is a little suspicious. So.
Does she? I thought she was outside of Mid-Culture, which is only about 3 miles away.
She shows
up when the men are taking Trotty's body away.
Yeah, like she shows up when the body's there. So
I thought that happened closer to Mid-Culture.
It might have been. I don't know if they were taking the body to Mid-Culture maybe, but she encountered them on the road.
Yeah, I thought it was closer to Bogal because I thought they were taking the body just back to the. It didn't make any sense to me for these men to be dragging the corpse of this old midwife far away. Like they're just going to take her to the most convenient place to bury her, right? So.
And there was never any explanation given as to why she was outside of Mid-Culture at night. So maybe she does have something to do with the death.
Yeah. Like I thought that was weird. Why was she out there with a pistol? Like it's just weird.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Lymond also seems to think it's weird.
Yeah. I like the mysteries. I like that we've gone back to sort of like, here's a mystery for you to solve. And I'm going to try and do my best at it. So I just don't think we have all the information we need yet.
Yeah. There is, I'm going to say when the first time I read it, I knew what it was at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
You can put it together. Keep thinking about what's happened.
Well, I mean, I think that there's a plot that I think that Joleta and Graham have a plot. And I think it has something to do with Lyman. But I don't know what that plot is. whether it's like seduce him into something, or because they keep throwing that word around, or I don't know, traffic. But I'm also confused about why that would be. Like, is Lyman really such a figure of note that this knight in Malta and his sister would have some sort of plan? Like, that just seems unrealistic to me. So, but maybe I'm underestimating the fame of Lyman. I don't know. So
he's like super capable and available.
Yeah.
Everybody wants him. Of course, I mean, this is a really over the top book series. Let's be honest.
Or maybe I'm trying to put maybe I'm trying to think like, how fast does news travel in the 1500s? And maybe that's a little. Maybe I just need to drop that idea and just go with it. But yeah, it's. I mean, I've missed some sort of clue or something, but I do feel that Joleta is in Scotland on purpose with a plan to do something. I think that thing has to do with Lyman.
Yeah, so I didn't know at this point. I didn't know who killed Trotty, and I didn't know what Gabriel and Joleta's plan was, but I knew what the secret was that Philippa found out.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Do we think Joleta would have it in her to be part of a plot to murder? I mean, she's horrible, but is murder part? Would she have hired somebody to kill Trotty to keep the secret?
So we know the secret, whatever it is.
You can guess what it is, that information, but you're not expected to know. I just knew because I guessed.
Huh. Okay.
All right, I'm going to delve into that a little further next week and see if I can figure it out.
I have faith that you can figure it out.
Because I think I could think that Gabriel has an agent working for them that also could have murdered Trotty, because somehow he knew that, oh shit, Joleta said something to this Trotty luck up girl, and I don't want it to get out. That's what I'm assuming. Like I said, I thought it was Gabriel, but that's physically impossible at this point. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things I highlighted in this section that I thought are interesting. One of them is the descriptions of Scotland as Tom is on his deathbed and he's thinking about the political situation, and he's thinking about how the leadership is divided, and how Scotland's future is at risk because it's being pulled between France and England, and how the infighting amongst the Scottish lords is putting Scotland at such a disadvantage. And he's thinking about what could bring them together, and he thinks about all these things like a great leader, an attack from outside, a single religion, but like all those things could fall apart. And then he thinks about, well, a decade of peace where the people could just prosper and like learn to get along with each other and learn that, you know, like building things is a better life than just fighting with each other. Couple thoughts on that. One, it's very similar to what O'Liamro thought about Ireland in the speech he gave to Cormac O'Connor in the previous book. Like, let's create old men and let's grow things instead of fighting. And then also it's very similar to the knights and how they're at such a disadvantage and they're lacking in leadership, and they're kind of, the whole like Christian world is like pulling each other apart instead of unifying against their common enemy. And I feel like obviously the big parallel in this book is between the Knights of Malta and then the Scottish lords who are feuding with each other, and how in both cases they're putting themselves at a disadvantage by doing that.
Yeah. I did like this description of Philippa where it says, a Philippa who at 13 had every cell charged like her mother's with stark common sense, was in Scotland, etc. And it was really funny because I read that and I'm like, what? Like, no. I mean, maybe she's super practical about things all the time, but her like ridiculous, over the top resentment and hatred of Lyman is not commonsensical. So.
Well, and also she goes out after Trotty at night on her own.
Yeah.
He keeps the secret that Tom's deathbed confession, she keeps a secret.
Right, yeah. This is a 13-year-old girl who is caught up in the drama of her own life. It's not. And she's very, and as all young teenagers are, she's very egocentric. Like, she's not thinking about consequences for other people. She's not thinking about, future consequences for herself. And I don't blame her for that, because it's incredibly typical of young teenagers, but it's certainly not common sense. Yeah.
Your long-standing theory of shipping Lymond and Philippa is definitely growing some strength for me.
Right? That whole line she said about how hatred turns into love later. She was talking about Joleta, and I'm like, girl.
Uh-huh. I was like, oh, now I know why you hate Lyman so much. You're crushing on him.
It's true.
Can we talk about how incredibly sad I am that Tom Erskine is dead?
Me too.
Like, I can't be mad about it because he's a historical figure and he had to die when he actually died. But like, he had such potential to be such a good ally. I mean, he already was a good ally to Lyman, but like, I'm sure Lyman had plans for him as part of St. Mary's. I'm sure if he wasn't going to be one of the trainees there, he would have at least been like a lecturer on diplomacy or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I'm sure he wouldn't have been part of it. Like,
no.
he's too important and has his own thing going. But yeah, like having him give, I just feel like there's a gap in wisdom now in Scotland, and the Queen no longer has his voice in her ear, and that will be missed. I mean, just in terms of the larger picture of Scotland, and it's just so sad. I feel so bad for Margaret.
Oh, that's terrible what happens later. We'll get there. Here at least is a death that Lyman cannot feel responsible for, even though I'm sure he probably does in some way. Like, there's literally nothing he could have done or not have done to save Tom Erskine, because it had nothing to do with him. So I'm glad that there's a character that's died that literally cannot be traced back to Lyman. I'm not glad that there's a character that died.
It's just a sad thing to be grateful for. Like, at least one person who died wasn't his fault.
Right? Although I wouldn't put it past Lyman to somehow blame himself for it. Like, if I only been in Scotland earlier, maybe I could have done something. Yeah. Maybe that's why he gets so snarky with people. He's like, obviously he's affected by Tom's death, but
he's really sad. I mean, Tom was his ally and his friend. There's the line that got to me the most is actually when Tom is looking at Philippa and he thinks her mother had sat just like this at the deathbed of the girl he was once to have married long before Margaret. So he's the Philippa with Tom, and then the fact that Kate was with Christian just breaks my heart.
Yeah. So sad.
But yeah, he was a historical figure, and he did die from this illness that was going around at this time. So
it's too late to be the plague, right? Sweating sickness is something else.
It's something else. Yeah, I googled it once. It was an actual thing that was going around at the time, and there was a bunch of people that died from it that year.
God, it sounds awful.
I was trying to think of illnesses that brought high fever, and I was thinking, like, was it typhoid or cholera or something? I mean, like, a lot of those illnesses were just, they were just around all the time, and water wasn't great, and sanitation wasn't great. So
I don't remember anymore. I think I read that they don't actually know exactly what it was, but it was a thing that like went around and a ton of people died.
Some people who just caused really high fevers and people died.
Maybe it was the first outbreak of COVID. Sorry, I had to go there.
Don't go there.
Yeah,
Too soon.
Anything else for this first part?
Do we want to talk about the confrontation between Lyman and Philippa over Trotty's body?
Definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I forgot that was in this section.
Yeah, I mean, I think, tell me you guys' thoughts. Because his behavior toward her is interesting.
I don't think he assumes that she's the one that killed her.
Wait. I want to go back really quick though to this a little bit sad thing about Tom's death as well, is that Tom almost chose on his deathbed to try and fix the Philippa Lyman thing, and then decided not to. Like as he was dying. I'm like, whoa. So it's like there was this chance lost of him to speak reason into the mind of this girl and sort of change her path a little bit here, and he chose not to.
Would she have listened?
It might have been for the best, because the reason he chooses not to is he's thinking about how like a deathbed promise is kind of like you're forcing someone to do something almost against their will.
Yeah, but it may have like caused a shock to help her, because she's just so stuck in this. She's stuck in this way that she's thinking about Lyman, and she just can't get out of it. So it might have been enough to like shock her into just having a different perspective, and then who knows? But we don't know, because he decided not to, because he's still mad at Lyman. So, oh, Tom.
I imagine a lot of what happens in the rest of this book could have easily been fixed if Philippa just tells Lyman the secret.
Yeah.
I'm sure she will eventually, but probably a lot of dramatic things will happen first.
Yeah, when she chooses not to tell Lyman, I just wrote, oh, Philippa, that will end badly. Like, yeah.
So yes, she and the boy that she's with discover the dead body of Trotty, and of course, who comes riding up but Lymond and crew with Jarrett. So this is the first time we get the information that Jarrett is now traveling with Lymond without Gabriel instead.
So it's an interesting scene actually, because he's quite distant from her. He says, "Why, the heir of the Somervilles with attendant. You have a problem, I see. May we help you? Is that your old lady or someone else's?" And this makes her absolutely infuriated. Her eyes fill with angry tears, and she thinks this is the only man who could airily jest about an old woman battered to death in a ditch. And she's just like blinded by her hatred and sees him as being terrible. But if you look at what he actually does, if you take that whole watch his hands thing, see what he actually does rather than what he says, he offers to help. He gets her an escort home, and he even gives her his cloak and wraps it around her to keep her warm. So he's actually quite kind and helpful here, but she just sees it as him being a total jerk.
Well, also when he says like, tell me one thing, Philippa, did you follow Trotty here from Bog Hall? So he like immediately tells her that he knows the woman. Like she just ignores that, and she doesn't see past his sort of flippancy to the fact that this is actually someone he knows, and it doesn't. But she's of course she doesn't, because she's stuck in how she's thinking. And
well, and also he's questioning her, and he might have gotten further, but then she reveals about Tom Erskine being on his deathbed, and once Lyman hears that, he's just single focused on that, and he stops with digging with what was going on with Philippa and why Philippa was following her. He might have found out then that she was trying to find out a secret if he kept pushing.
And he doesn't get to Bog Hall in time. Like Tom passes away like right before he gets there.
Yeah. And then the secret is described as a powder keg, which not a great, like that's a bit ominous. So
I want to know what it is now.
It's also described as an unsavory truth earlier on. An unsavory truth and a powder keg.
Unsavory truth. It could be about Lyman's parentage. I mean, that's already been put into question in the past. I don't know why Trotty would know, but
yeah, that's why I was thinking, because of her like going in and out of homes when people are sick and giving birth and stuff. That's why I think that's what it is. It's something about Lyman's parentage. But if I don't know,
she's a midwife.
Yeah. Like if he doesn't, right? So if Lyman is illegitimate, and she knew that, and that's what she told Richard, then, or that's what she told Tom, and Philippa found out about it, then like I don't know how Philippa, like Lyman wouldn't be humiliated by, I guess he'd be humiliated if the secret got out, but she's not telling anybody. And then
I can't do this now. I'll look back later.
I'm sorry. Like and also I remember I suspected ages ago, I don't even know if it's this book or the last book, but I was kind of wondering if Richard was illegitimate and Lyman wasn't, in which case it would be more likely for her to keep the secret, maybe, because then Lyman would be kept from power or something. I don't know.
So I had a quick flash of a thought. I need to go back and reread that first part. But why would they call in Trotty Luckup a midwife when Joleta got sick earlier?
Well,
She
isn't
was
she just
closest
kind of like
one?
a medicine, like a folk?
I think she's not a midwife. She's like a folk medicine woman.
Yeah, so she would just be called in when people are sick in various ways.
So is it possible Joleta was pregnant? And that's why she suddenly got sick?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I certainly would believe that. I mean, about her.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and reread that first
Yeah, I
part.
need to go reread that scene. That would be interesting, in which case... Oh boy, I just had a super dark thought.
What?
What? Oh. Ooh. What if, this is creepy, but what if Graham and Joleta are like incestuously together?
Ew.
I know, like that was super dark, but I'm like, that would be bad.
Yeah, I mean, I know we think that they're both kind of evil, but that's like...
Like it's super, super evil. Like I don't actually think that that's true because that seems way over the top. I mean, this is an over the top book, but that seems...
That's some George R.R. Martin stuff there.
Yeah, it seems over the top in a way that we haven't seen Dunnett go, I don't think. So maybe not, but I don't know.
You have a dark mind, Dee.
Sorry. It's like,
Yeah.
forget I said it. Never mind. Like I don't think there's any textual.
I don't know if there's any textual about her being pregnant either. Because like, it wasn't described as her showing any kind of belly at all. Like, unless she was trying to hide it. I don't know. I thought she just got
I remember how her clothes were described. If they were like flowy. Because loose and flowy would hide it.
Apricot.
We gotta go read that scene again later. And
yeah. I'll work on that theory, see if it bears any fruit. So.
Yeah.
That was a pun.
If there is a fruit, it's going to be an apricot or a peach.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Peach. For sure.
So should we jump into the next section where Joleta and Lyman finally meet?
Is that the next section? I guess so. Yeah.
Next part of this chapter. So before that happens, in the second half of this chapter, we learn that it's been about 2 months since they all left Malta, and Graham Reed Mallet has sort of gone this tour of Greater Europe to give his explanation of what happened. That Juan de Jomedes, he blamed it all on the French, and Gabriel is trying to get people to believe otherwise. We get our first sort of bit about St. Mary's, that Lyman is going to be training a war council or people for war. And then Lyman comes across Joleta, who has come across Archie. Yay, Archie's back. They have been transporting the body of Trotty, and Joleta immediately thinks they're the ones that murdered her and points a gun at them. Lyman tries to sneak up behind her, and she turns around and shoots, misses him, but accidentally kills a horse, and then she faints as Richard arrives.
I think was so fake. I don't think she fainted. I think she just like fainted as a tactic to get out of dealing with this thing that she caused.
Yeah, well, especially after reading her shenanigans later in the 4th chapter. Yeah. Definitely. I'm glad Archie's back.
Also, okay, I had a quick question. Jared hasn't met Joleta before, because it says that they were to, this is in mid 274, instead they were to call it mid-culture, and he would be forced in Lyman's presence to meet for the first time Gabriel's sister Joleta. And so I totally thought Joleta was at Malta before she came, but she must not have been. Like, how did Jared not meet her?
Yeah, that actually surprised me. She was at a convent on Malta, So maybe like
Oh.
men wouldn't be visiting her, she wouldn't be visiting men. Maybe just like Gabriel would go visit her at her convent.
Okay. So you just never,
They did
Jared
not meet
just
socially.
never encountered her. Okay. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, what?
Yeah. I think there's a couple interesting bits here. One is kind of at the start of this when we're in Jarrett's mind, and basically the reason he's calm, and it's because of Gabriel, of course. And Gabriel tells him that so Gabriel's been going around kind of defending the knights in Europe, and he's exhausted and he's lost weight. And he says that his doctor told him that he needs to go to Scotland and rest.
Mm.
And so, of course, Jared is just horrified that he's still got his heart set on Lymond, and Gabriel's whole thing is that if he failed to convert Lymond, maybe Joleta can successfully convert Lymond, and the best thing that could happen would be for Lymond to join the order because he was converted by Joleta. So it's, I guess, making it really clear, because we kept talking earlier, why does Gabriel want him so much? It's like, at least from what he's saying, it's I want him to join the order. I want him to join the order.
Yeah. Yeah. The way that Gabriel or that Jarrett thinks about when he first sees Joleta, and he says, like he took a step forward and then a step backward. And then he says, he was shaking a little as one did when the cathedral doors opened, and kneeling, one felt the bearers brush by an incense and saw the still loving smile of the saint. I just wrote to the side, oh Lord, please.
Not only that, his eyes were wet, so he's crying at the sight of her, and his hand is covered in blood because he's grabbed a thorn bush and he's holding it so tight that he's bleeding just from looking at Joleta.
Oh, drama.
Like, get it together.
She's so beautiful. You can see the veins under her pale skin.
Ugh.
Okay. And this is notably, I think, the first time, not the last, where Lyman calls her a peach, I agree, but a dangerous peach. And then later on, he sees her again and he calls her a poison peach.
Mm-hmm. And he mentions the peaches are rotten at the core.
Which, you can get cyanide from peach pits. So,
let's go ahead.
Oh, there's a very subtle bit. It's since leaving Bog Hall, Lyman had not spoken. The death of Erskine was a pity, Jarrett supposed. The Queen had lost a loyal supporter. This is Jarrett being completely oblivious to the fact that Lyman is actually deeply mourning Tom and really upset. And Jarrett, of course, has no idea that Lyman has any deep feelings whatsoever and just totally misses it. And so all Lyman's kind of jerk behavior in this, you can, if you know him and you read between the lines, can read as he's in mourning and he's lashing out.
Which is not always a great excuse.
No, but it's very Lyman.
And yeah, it's very Lyman in the sense that he does that a lot, and I think it just contributes to the he's younger than we think he is thing, because he doesn't deal with like emotional, like he doesn't deal with sadness very well at all, and he deals with it in a way that is kind of self-harm. Like he harms himself when he's sad because he lashes out at other people and makes his life harder, and he loses all of his diplomacy for snarkiness, and he would be like, snap out of it.
And he says a really sort of mean-hearted thing about Philippa further down that paragraph, when Jarrett says, but she's no beauty. And Lyman's reply is, God, I suppose, sends a shrewd cow a short horn. It's like, that was almost over the top. It's like, there's a certain level you can take it to. And I felt like that was crossing a line.
I don't know. Jarrett's the one who said she's ugly. And Lyman's actually saying, well, but she's smart.
I don't know. I thought it was mean-hearted.
I mean, he's definitely kind of very, very, very smart.
I mean, Jarrett is also sort of comparing her to Joleta in this moment because he's just bloodied himself on the thorn bush in awe of her beauty. Men.
Yeah, there's a bunch of comparisons between Joleta and Philippa throughout, where Joleta is so beautiful and Philippa is so plain.
Yeah, Jarrett is not endearing himself to me.
So this first meeting between Lyman and Joleta, which involves him being very rude to her and her shooting a horse and fainting. What do you think? Why do you think Dunnett makes this their first meeting? Like, what is she setting up, or what is she foreshadowing that this is how they encounter each other?
Well, it's not how I thought their first meeting would go. That's for sure. I'm not quite sure what it's setting up, but we see every time they sort of meet, he's just very antagonistic towards her. And like, you've gotten this idea, and everybody has this idea that he's going to seduce her and she's going to seduce him, and it's going to be bad all around. But I think he's actively trying to show people that that's not what he's about.
Also, like in this meeting, she does not come off well. Like, she makes assumptions. She holds a gun to his men. She's like she has Archie, right? That's who she's got. Yeah, she's holding on to Archie with a gun to his head, basically. Lyman has a pretty good plan to get it away from, like, to get her unarmed without hurting her, but it's foiled by the guy with the light.
Just Archie, isn't it?
Huh?
I think it is Archie is the one that shone the light.
No, it was
no. There's a guy behind Lyman who shines the light, which causes Lyman's shadow to extend, and so Joleta sees his shadow and turns around and shoots at him. But so she just comes off as impulsive and making snap judgments, and impulsive to the point of violence. Like, it's not, she does not come off well in this scene. And it's, yeah, you feel like all of Lyman's antagonism towards her is completely justified.
You could read it as she's a scared child and she's just seen this caretaker dead, and she believes that these strange men have murdered this poor old woman, and so she's just panicked and trying to protect herself.
But I think that's a snap judgment. Like, no. I do not read it that way. I read it as the arrogance of making a judgment and deciding to be like judge, jury, and executioner for this group of innocent men who came across a dead body. And yeah.
But if we assume that she had some part in this murder plot, then this is also her trying to foist the blame on someone else and covering her tracks.
That is very true. Actually, very, very true. Yeah.
I have another comment on this, which is a slightly different topic, but it's when Richard shows up, there's this, the quality of his greeting to his younger brother was new, as was Lyman's response. And then shortly after that, Richard is asking how Joleta was fooled into firing, and he says, "Don't tell me that wasn't your fault." A familiar wariness displacing the warmth of reunion. So their initial encounter is uncommonly warm between Richard and Lyman, because as we know, they made up and they're closer than they've been, but there's still this edge of suspicion that Richard has toward, or wariness that Richard has toward Lyman. So their relationship, even though it's good, it's not perfect.
And what was the last time Richard and Lyman saw each other was in France, when Lyman was still like super injured from the race, right?
No, it's when he came back. So he was on his way back to health. But yeah, remember they met up at that inn.
Right. Okay. So, but it was still sort of the remnants of all of that Tatty Boy stuff.
Yeah. But I mean, they were on very good terms in Queensway compared to Game of Kings, obviously.
Yeah, this is sliding a little bit back towards, it's somewhere in the middle of their relationship that we've seen in the previous two books. So
clearly Richard is worried about the Joleta situation.
Well, and he's been living with Joleta, so he's seen sort of what she can do.
Do you think Richard doesn't strike me as the most perceptive of people? I'm wondering, Like, does he see Joleta for what? I mean, I feel like Sibylla would have clear eyes when it comes to Joleta, but I'm not sure that Richard does.
Richard's pretty traditional in his thinking.
Yeah.
He sees his wild bisexual brother, and then he sees this sweet, innocent, convent-raised girl. It's not Joleta that he's worried is doing anything bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. He'll place all the blame on Lyman if anything happens between them.
Sure. Of course.
So the last bit in the chapter, Philippe, do you want to summarize that? Because I love that.
So basically, he comes home and Sibylla says, well, mon cher, I hear heaven preserve the counted that you are a count. And Sibylla and Lyman reunite after it's probably been over a year since they last saw each other, right? Because he had the whole adventure in France and Malta, maybe 2 years even.
Yeah, at least a year.
It's a nice reunion.
Well, yeah, it's Jarrett Blythe missed the true homecoming. So this is the most important homecoming. And the degree of their attachment to each other is really intense here. Reality for her began when her absent son Francis, bright, sun-browned, and vivid, stood deferentially at the door of her parlor, and she was able to say, her voice sweet. And then Lyman closed the door, and not even Richard would have intruded on them then. This is a very, very intense mother-son relationship we have going here.
Yeah. And I really wonder, like, what they told each other in that scene. Like, we don't get that scene here, but, like, what is it that Sibylla imparts to Lyman? What does, what does Lyman impart to her? And I kind of wondered a little bit, like, Lyman obviously formed his opinion of Joleta in that first scene, but I also kind of wonder if Sibylla told him about her, because he definitely doesn't fall for any of her tricks. When he sees her the next time in that room when she's in the chair, everything, like, he totally knows what's going on. So I kind of wondered if Sibylla filled him in a little bit.
I'm almost certain that she did.
Yeah.
I mean, we know Sibylla's super perceptive. She has to have seen some of the mischief that Joleta has gotten herself into while at Mid-Culture.
Really?
So if anybody would notice, it would be Sibylla, and then probably Marietta, Richard being the last to notice things, of course.
Yeah. But I mean, if Sibylla's doing things like messing with Kevin, like
Joleta.
Joleta. If Joleta's doing things like messing with Kevin, then Sibylla.
Yeah, she gets the baby drunk.
Like, that's nuts.
Like, any hope that I had for Joleta as being like a good person went down the drains when I read that part. I literally dropped the book and my eyes were like, what?
Yeah.
She got the baby drunk on purpose?
Terrible.
It's funny when it's drunk. One last comment on this scene between Lyman and Sibylla is it's an echo of the final scene of Game of Kings, and in both cases their relationship is so intimate that even the reader isn't privy to it, which is actually really effective. I feel like if we got what they were talking about, it would be less powerful than the fact that the door is closed to us too, and it's like this is their bubble that only they are in.
Yeah. I love, by the way, the title of the next chapter, because I really love the word Widdershins, and I always have. And so I'm like, ooh, what's going to be bad luck in this chapter? Or like backwards, or I just love that word for counterclockwise.
Yep.
I wish people used it more. You need to turn the knob, Widdershins.
You can single-handedly revive it, Dee.
I wish. So many words I would revive if I had that power.
So, since we're moving on to the Widdershins wooing, it's the same day at Mid-Culture. We sort of get Jarrett's sort of point of view of what's happening in this family, and Lyman yells at Archie for something, which I thought was interesting. Everyone in the castle seems flushed and excited that Lyman is back. Marietta is like doing her embroidery, but sort of like paying attention to everything. Will Scott is there and he's flushed. He's very excited that he's back. We find out that the Scotts and the Kerrs are still a thing. Their feud is still going on. And Will Scott thinks that Joleta is there to convert Lyman into the order, just like Graham Reed Mallet was. And then Joleta sort of wakes up from her fainting and comes down to the parlor where everybody is gathered. And some very interesting things have happened. So this is where Lyman comes into the room and pretends that he doesn't know that she's there. And Sibylla asks him a question, what she really feels about it. And he says something kind of nasty. And then, to everybody's chagrin and amazement, he pulls her in for a kiss. Does he actually kiss her, or does he stop right before?
He doesn't kiss her. He like starts to kiss her and then rejects her. By the way, I want to say, I think I know what he was scolding Abernathy about.
Okay.
It was about getting caught by a 16-year-old girl with a pistol. Like, I think he ripped him up one side and down the other for like.
And for hiring that guy who was carrying the torch that he had whipped and fired.
Yeah.
So after that, and after everything's settled, after he tries to kiss, or purposely doesn't kiss.
He doesn't. He's not trying to kiss her. He's just trying to humiliate her.
He's making a big show of not wanting to kiss her.
Yeah.
He tells his family about his plans for St. Mary's, and then at the end of the chapter, there's a great moment with Lymond and Kevin. So now we can discuss in more detail.
Okay, first of all, the parallel between Marietta, who we know has a crush on Lyman, and Will Scott, who also has a crush on Lyman, and how they're both like turning red with excitement that Lyman's back. And it's like, Dunnett's not even trying. Like, she's making it very clear that they both have big crushes.
Yeah.
I've missed Marietta. I wish she had a larger part. Maybe she will.
Yeah.
I do love her. Also, one of the funniest things is Sibylla. Just getting Sibylla's like practical and hilarious take on things, including, as with the narrator, Sibylla also thinks Jared is super hot. And the first thing she says is, all the most beautiful men become monks. And then she also is the one that gives us that insight about what's really going on with Lyman, where she says, I know you wouldn't think so, but he's thoroughly upset by Tom Erskine's death. And when Francis is troubled, he doesn't show it. He just goes and makes life wretched for somebody.
Yeah, true.
Keep that in mind because it's going to keep happening.
True. And then we get this, like, Jarrett's opinion about the Crawfords. And you just have to wonder how reliable this description of the family is, because it's from Jarrett. So it can't, like, it's just his thoughts, which are, they'd always been wealthy, of course, like his own family. You're just like, oh boy, the privilege. Less from their skill in war, that was considerable, et cetera, et cetera. A native ingenuity in the handling of characterful experts. And Francis Crawford, they must hardly know, meaning like the people, but that's like, you get this, that's not actually true at all. Like,
and he would possess, you could depend on it, a certain shoddy appeal for the women folk.
Right.
It's like, that's not what's going on here.
So if Lyman were to become the man Gabriel hoped, indeed, that Jared with satisfying logic, there's again that idea that he thinks he's so logical, but he's not at all. It must be removed. The shoddy appeal to women must be removed.
Yeah.
No. Oh, crazy. I did love this picture of how Will Scott has matured and how, like, he's just become this voice of reason and moderate leadership, and
all that time that Lyman put in the first book, despite how infuriating Will was, is now paying off, and he's this mature leader who's stepping up and taking on what his father was doing, but in a better, more moderate way.
And he's got children.
Yeah, he got 3 kids in 3 years, which is like, he really likes his wife.
Yeah, apparently. Good old Grizel.
But yeah, I mean, again, this is that that thing we got with the Knights of Malta and with the different lords within Scotland. And Will is the one who has this vision similar to Lyman, that we need to unite in order to protect ourselves because we have all these external enemies. And Will is in the position to be able to make that change because he's the heir to Buccleuch.
Mm-hmm.
Which is it's just another reflection of Tom Erskine's dying wish as well, like that decade of peace for everyone to grow and, not be constantly warring with each other. And Like Lyman has that wish for Scotland. Will Scott has that wish for Scotland. Tom Erskine has that wish for Scotland. And you just know it's not going to happen. Yeah.
I can hope.
Yeah.
So then we also have, this is Lyman's first encounter with Joleta, and this is where he says, she's a peach. I told Jarrett she's a peach. He can have her. Some are clingstones and some are fruit stones, but each dear little fuzzy fruit is packed full of poison. And he says that pretending he doesn't know she's in the room, but he probably does know she's in the room.
No, because her duenna, is that how you say it? Her governess or whatever is in the room. And there's no way that woman would be in the room if Joleta wasn't in the room. So Lyman definitely knows she's in the room because he talked to the governess right before he does that.
She could be in the room without Joleta. They're not attached to the hip.
Probably not though. Like most likely if she's in the room, Joleta's in the room. So like I can just totally see Lyman going up to her, chatting with her in Italian, looking around the room for Joleta, seeing there's a chair that blocks, like he can't see the chair, and be like, oh, there she is. And then saying this whole thing.
He definitely knows she's there. He's definitely ripping on her on purpose.
And I think Sibylla, when she asked that question, also knows that Lyman knows that she's there. Because like we said, Sibylla is super perceptive. So yeah, she sets this up quite nicely for him.
So their exchange is interesting because Lyman immediately like starts insulting her and doesn't stop. After he says the thing about poison, he says he smelt the incense and that's how he knew she was there. And he's basically kind of making his whole thing about like how he's not interested in her. And then Joleta gets back at him and she says that Gabriel wrote to her and said, I'm not to be concerned if he shows the selfsame alarm on encountering me. And this is because he's apprehensive of seduction by Mother Church. So she's actually saying like, she's getting this blow against him and saying like, you're just acting like this because you're scared of me. Mm. And the thought is never in anyone's experience had the protagonist made to look foolish been Lyman. So like she makes Lyman look foolish. Mm. And that's when he grabs her, acts like he's going to kiss her. And at the very last second he stops and he says, no, I'm sorry. It's like kissing a chapel. Less a mouth, you might say, than a hole for the bell rope.
Yeah.
Like he drops her on the floor.
Yeah.
And this obviously pisses off Sibylla. Sibylla yells at him and he has to put in a bunch of effort to like get back on Sibylla's good side because he pissed off his mother by treating their guests like this.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it kind of makes everybody in the room mad except Will Scott, who was hysterically laughing about it.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me that Richard is so worried that Lyman is going to fall like madly in love with Joleta. And like it says at the top of 335 says the Crawfords on the other hand were hugging a different discovery equally pleasing. The simple village maiden, which first of all, what in the world of a description of Joleta is that? Was not about to fall under the young master's spell, and vice versa, as Richard afterwards said, vice incredibly versa. And it's like Richard is like, oh, thank God, Lyman is not gonna like fall under the spell of this girl. And I'm like, really? He thinks that it's just like his opinion of Lyman is so low in some ways.
Yeah, remember at the beginning, he didn't want Joleta even coming to Malta because he was afraid Lyman was going to just like seize her and rape her or something.
Yeah, crazy.
Only on Fridays.
Only on Fridays. There's also an interesting exchange where like Lyman's family is sort of doubting his morality and he's sort of playing that up. He says that he's basically left Malta behind in the hands of this terrible Grand Master. And Sibylla thinks, so you leave Malta at the mercy of this greedy old man and his retinue. That isn't like you, my boy. Mm-hmm. And then he makes the thing again about how the army he's starting is severely practical, no principles and no philosophy, for financial gain only, which again is not like him. And Sibylla, you can see, is like, what is he doing? Has he lost his ethics? Yeah. What do you guys think? What is going on there?
He may be putting on the front that this army that he's raising is for financial gain only, but that's not what's happening. He's doing it for other reasons.
Well, I think it is for like he is trying to raise a mercenary army that's going to make him a lot of money. Like, I don't think that's wrong. Like, I think he is telling the truth. I just don't think he's telling the whole truth. I think even if he's telling the truth at this moment, like, it could totally be that his intention is to be incredibly mercenary and that he's just like, I'm giving up on any plan to impact the world for moral reasons and I'm just going to be totally mercenary. Like, that could actually be his plan. But even if that's his plan, I don't think that's how it's going to work out. Like, he could decide, like, we're just going to be out there to make money and be a good army. And then, you know, immediately he's going to get caught up in something, I'm sure. And like this, there's no way that he's going to run this morally neutral fighting force around Europe. Like, no way.
It is a good question. Is he serious when he says this? Does he think he's doing this just for money? Because he has a lot of money. So why does, or does he already have an alternate plan? Like, we know he made that decision in Dragout's tent. We don't know what the decision was. Was it a decision to form his army only for money? Why would he make that at that time?
And I wonder if, because he does clearly have a lot of money because he's able to set up the army in the first place, which, whoa, when they started doing that description, I was like, holy crap, this is a lot of money. And then as soon as somebody, I think it's Jarrett, who's like, says, this is a lot, I was like, yeah, this is a lot of money. So clearly he has tons of money. And so I kind of wondered, is he doing this because he wants to do something, like to give himself something to do that's worthwhile? Like, you know, he doesn't want to be part of the Queen's court. He doesn't want to be part of the King of France's court. He doesn't want to, he can't stay at Midcoulter because his brother, like, he can't stay there because his brother is in charge and Kevin is the heir. And I'm not sure that his home in France is all that attractive to him there. So like he's kind of at loose ends, and this is certainly a challenge, which would be.
And much of Queensplay was, how can I make an impact on the world without tying myself to someone else's agenda?
Yeah.
And I also see it as a natural progression of, he knows that people are going to follow him. It's something that's been happening throughout his whole life. And he's had these failures with Will Scott betraying him in the first book, with Robin Stewart doing everything he did and then killing himself in the second. It's like, if I can do nothing to stop people from following me, I at least need to give them the means to make the good choices and like not give their lives for me in vain.
Yeah, and I can see this, like, this challenge of sort of putting together this highly qualified group of men who are bonded together. You know, like, I can just see him excited about that challenge. Like, this is something that he's uniquely qualified to do, and it would take effort. Like, it would be an intellectual challenge, it would be a physical challenge, and you know, and not boring, which I feel like being bored is Lyman's like nemesis. You know, like, if he gets bored, we're in trouble. So
he'll find something to pique his interest.
And he even drives Sibylla insane. Like, she loves him more than anything in the world, but even she's like, oh my god, you gotta get out of my house now.
Yeah. You gotta go do something. So yeah, so it seems like this whole scheme of his is like uniquely crafted for his strengths. Which
we know the political situation in Scotland and the warring lords that are undercutting Scotland itself. And we know that he tells the men when he starts the army that we may intervene in the affairs of Scotland. So not hard to extrapolate some agenda from that. There's an interesting bit here in Sibylla's point of view. We like briefly slip into her point of view, and she thinks about how it's a pity that he had proved so spell resistant to Graham Reed Mallet. And she thinks she had no yearning to see Francis a monk, an involuntary smile crossed her face at the thought, but she believed him altogether too resistant to altogether too much. What's going on there with Sibylla? What is she concerned about with Lymond?
I think she's concerned that he's disconnected from things, that he's not forming attachments. He's not forming, like, he doesn't have a family. You know, he seems to have no interest in forming a family of his own. Like, if he joined an order, they would be a family. They would be, you know, connected. I think she just sees him like bopping around from thing to thing, and it's not what she wants for her boy, you know.
Yeah.
And so then we end on Kevin.
Yay. And this is the first time that he meets Kevin, I believe, right?
Yep.
Because he wasn't born before he left for France. And I
Mhm.
love how he calls him the Martinmas hog, because he's this plump little chubby baby that Marietta is hauling around.
And he immediately takes the baby and starts bouncing him and plays with him, and the baby laughs. And we end on Sibylla, felled by an unlooked for discovery about this. Her intellectual son sat grinning back at a view of the door, which was uncommonly blurred.
She
So
tears up.
she tears up watching how good Lymond is with his sweet nephew. Why is this scene here?
Well, I mean, it gives us, I mean, I think it's probably doing several things. Like, it shows us Lyman's connection to Kevin.
And that he's forgiven him completely for taking
Yeah.
the table.
So, like, he's an adoring uncle kind of scene. It gives us it gives us a brief glimpse of, like, Lyman as father, like what he would be like with, which we've seen before. Like, we've seen many scenes where he's been good with children.
Mhm.
And so
I think it's also a bit of foreshadowing, because Una's still pregnant, and
oh yeah,
while it's not clear whether the baby is his or not, I think
definitely is
clear that the baby is his,
yeah,
which will come back into his life at some point.
at some point. I just hope he doesn't end up with like an angry teenage son in 10 years or something, or 15 years.
Oh God.
We also just had this thought of Sibylla's about, like you're saying, about Lyman being too resistant to too much. And here's then this moment where his defenses come down and he stops being like, I don't care about anything. And instead he's just happy with the kid. I feel like there's some subtext of Lyman would be a good dad and he would love to have a kid.
I think Lyman would be a good dad. Yeah.
And Philippe, I think you're right. It's here in this moment because we've got this ticking time bomb of Una.
Wherever she may be.
Do you think she's going to come? Philippe, obviously, Laura, you know. Do you think she's going to come back in this book?
No. I don't think this book. I think she'll definitely be back, because there's this hanging, ticking time bomb of a child on the way. So
that's what I think too. Like, and it's weird. I feel like she's gone off and we're not going to see her for a while. And it's kind of weird that there is this like ticking time bomb of a kid, and yet I don't think she's coming back this book, which is
no, but feasibly, we know she's still alive. We know the time frame that the child was created. So while he's sort of throughout the whole winter training his men, I think that's probably around when she'd give birth.
Yeah.
But she may give birth in this book off screen.
Yeah.
Off screen.
Yeah, I think so.
Page.
You can't all the time. Like, we're in the winter, right? And when did he leave France to go to Malta?
I mean, he was in Malta for a couple months, and it's been 2 months now since he left Malta.
I think it was like June or July. I think it was June that they, or maybe May that they had sex. I don't remember.
So maybe might be about to be born.
So about to be born, or in the next month or so.
Yeah.
Should we move on to the Conscience of Philippa?
Sure.
Oh, Philippa.
Ah, Philippa. So it's the day after Tom's death, and Philippa gets brought back to Flaw Valleys. Kate sort of sees how she's processing this information and takes her to London instead of leaving her behind. And while she's there, Philippa visits her uncle. I forget his name, Anthony? He's not that important, but
yeah, he's not important.
One thing that happens while she's visiting her uncle is that she oversees George Paris visiting, who we've talked about George Paris before in the last book. He's this interesting character, and turns out that he is a double agent, that he is playing Ireland against France against England. I don't quite understand the intricacies of it all, but she wishes that she hadn't seen him there.
Also, I think this is a slight view into how perceptive and smart Philippa is, because not only does she recognize George Paris on sight, like she knows who he is, she knows he's a spy, she figures out he's a double agent by the fact that he's there. Like, she's a savvy kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So another thing that happens while she's there is Gabriel shows up. Yay. And because he's a holy man, she sort of asks the question on her conscience. And be like,
really
I have a friend who was told the secret on death, and I'm wondering if I should tell this person. Which really kind of scared me, because if Gabriel knows what's happening and knows about the secret, it's very easy to intuit that now Philippa knows, and like this puts her in danger if Gabriel is involved in it at all, which he probably is. So anyway, we find out that Margaret does not know that Tom is dead yet. The Queen Dowager has kept that information from her, and everybody is trying to keep her from that knowledge, even though Kate is super mad about it. Gabriel visits Kate and Philippa again a few days later, and he asks about Cormac O'Connor. There's a very interesting part where Gabriel mentions that he would let Lyman marry Joleta, just so he could like get the army at St. Mary's sort of under his control and used for the order. Super interesting. We'll talk about that. And then right at the end, Gabriel spills the beans to Margaret, of course, tells her that her husband is dead, accidentally, but I don't think it was an accident at all. So.
Why don't you think it was an accident?
I don't know. It just felt disingenuous the way that he did it. It felt like he was trying to be like, oh, I'm so terribly sorry. And then like he feigned that he didn't know, but I just feel like he did. I don't know.
I mean,
he's conniving.
Yeah, I wasn't sure that we could read the section again, but I wasn't sure that he did it on purpose. But I think it was, if anything, it was just careless. Like, I think he's focused on the things he cares about, and he's not that focused on other things, you know? And it just, if anything, it was just a careless move. And yeah.
I mean, you could sort of be like, you know, someone has lost their husband, you see them, the first thing you think is that you want to,
oh, I'm so sorry.
Condolences. Yeah, it's not like beyond the pale. It's, you know.
And if nobody told him that this was supposed to be a secret, it is a natural, you're right, it is a natural thing to say the first time you see someone. That's right. I'm so sorry for your loss. Like, that would be the first thing.
Oh, what loss is that?
Yeah. By the way, just to back up a little bit, I love this when Philippa says that whole thing about I have a friend as a problem. I love this little bit Dunnett put in about in words as old as the language of Eden. It's like ever since humanity has existed, we've been blaming the things that we want to talk to people about I have a friend.
I have a friend with a problem.
I have a friend with a problem. It's like that goes back to Adam and Eve. I just love it.
There's this man she doesn't like, and someone wants her to marry him, said Gabriel helpfully.
Oh God, no.
Startled into horrified amusement. Oh, no. She just hates him. Everybody does.
Everybody hates him. And it's like she cannot get away from him questioning her. It's like he questions small children. And this is this thing that happened years ago, like a couple of years ago, and she's just and laughs about old ladies who are hurt. So it's like the first thing he did against her and the last thing that she perceived, that's all she says. You know, she just
I mean, one is like when something happens to you as a child, it can be quite formative and you kind of, it's the stuff that sticks with you. And then also it was a traumatic experience. And also Philippa in particular is a stubborn person. So I think all of these together come as like formulating this opinion of I'm never going to forgive him.
Yeah.
So my favorite bit of the section is the exchange between Gabriel and Kate, which I think is super interesting. And I like highlighted a bunch of parts of it because you kind of have to read between the lines to see what's going on between them. But you, at least for me, I get the impression that Kate doesn't like Gabriel.
Oh yeah, I get that for sure.
Yeah, I got that.
And I really like, so the way like Gabriel comes in saying, you know, I failed with him. He cannot do without women. He cannot do without wealth. He cannot do without admiration. So Gabriel's like, I wanted to save him, but he's so selfish. And Kate defends him. And Kate actually says that there's nothing wrong with his standards. He merely has difficulty, as we all do, in living up to them with somewhat hair-raising results. So I love that Kate defends him. And I think that's what raises her hackles against Gabriel, is Gabriel's insulting her friend. And she knows that Lyman cares about more than, you know, money and women and admiration.
Well, I also think he's patronizing her. Like, because there's a point where she says, like, Kate, who did not like being humored either, switched the subject to Malta. And it's like, I think he's being kind of an overbearing dick, at least in her opinion. And she's not standing for it. Like, she's competent and she's in control and she is the local power in this area. And like this man coming in and talking down to her, she's like, nope.
Yep. And I love that she tries to shut him up twice by giving him a bun. Have a bun.
Yeah. Just have something to eat. Yeah, and I think it's a nice contrast too between Gabriel and Lyman. Like, Lyman doesn't speak to Kate that way. You know, like, Lyman respects her, and he respected Gabriel. I mean, he respected Gideon, and yeah. So it's not. By the way, one thing that I think that Philippa has, back to her conversation with Gabriel, one thing I think that she has completely overlooked is that I think she's forgotten that Trotty was murdered. When she has this whole thing about how, like, the secret wouldn't kill him, it wouldn't even hurt him except in his conceit. It was only that a promise to a dying man. So she's like, it's not a big deal. I don't have to tell him. You know, it's just, I only feel this way because I promised this guy. But I think she's completely overlooking the fact that somebody murdered this old woman. And she knows that happened. She's the one who discovered the body. But she's not connecting the fact that this lady was murdered with the secret that she has, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I assume she figures that Trotty was just randomly killed by robbers on the road and it doesn't have anything to do with the secret because she thinks the secret's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that I didn't think about before. If the secret is about Gabriel.
She's talking. Oh, that's right. She's talking to Gabriel.
So I don't know if she would bring it up to him. So maybe it doesn't have anything to do with Gabriel.
Maybe she.
Because she would be able to put those things together. I don't know.
Oh, that's a really good point. If the secret is about Joleta and Philippa knows who Gabriel is and knows that he's Joleta's brother, that seems like a super weird conversation for her to have with Gabriel.
Definitely. I mean, she definitely doesn't tell him what the secret is, but she's just asking whether she should honor Tom's death wishes or, you know.
And I thought it was a little suspicious that Gabriel offers to take her back to London with him. And I kind of, when he did that, I kind of thought, oh, is he either trying to weasel this secret out of her or, you know.
Yeah, I was like, don't get on that boat.
Yeah, don't get on that boat.
Do you think Gabriel knows that she's talking about Lyman, about this man that everybody hates?
Yeah, I think so.
I think he could infer it pretty easily if he knows sort of the history of what happened, which I believe Gabriel would have done his research on Lyman. So
yeah, well, it seems like everybody knows that Philippa hates Lyman.
Yeah.
So it makes you think, well, maybe the secret doesn't have anything to do with the mallets, but Gabriel would definitely want to know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Like,
unless he already does know what the secret is. In which case, I think Philippa's putting herself in danger by having this conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We shall see.
Have you guys been to Hampton Court Palace?
Mm-hmm.
Not. At least I don't think so.
I'll show pictures for any viewers. If you ever go to London or you're near London, this is a super easy place to visit on your tourist stop. I went there the first time I ever went to London.
I was actually going to go back this summer.
Oh, I have not been there. I should have visited.
It's amazing.
I took a boat from London on the Thames to get here.
How far is it from?
Great idea. It's in Zone 6 on the subway. Like, you can get there on the metro.
Okay.
On the underground. Yeah.
Well, I was supposed to go this summer for my 40th birthday. Oh, I can't believe I just admitted that. But maybe when I finally get there, I'll put that on my list. Thanks.
Yeah, you absolutely should. It's a good day trip. Like, I spent a whole day there, and I was planning on going back this summer because you just can't see the whole thing.
I remember there's a hedge maze, and there's a ton of like Henry VIII history that happened there that you can take tours and hear about.
I got to the center of the hedge maze. I was very proud of myself.
I love a good maze.
The last thing in this chapter really stuck with me. It's the second time we have a moment of Kate mourning Gideon.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we get those little moments because we lost him off screen and we never had the like cathartic, oh no, Gideon. So at least we're remembering him and Kate's remembering him, and it humanizes the whole thing.
I was so sad that he died. Like, these characters that I want to spend more time with. And
Dorothy Dunnett is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Going back a little bit, I'm curious as to Gabriel's intentions for bringing up Cormac O'Connor. Like, what was he trying to get? What was he trying to do by having that conversation?
What do you guess?
Well, I mean, I don't know. It just seemed really out of place. I know that he's sort of maybe fishing for information about Lyman's, how he really felt about Una, because he still sort of has the secret in the back of his pocket that she's alive and she's with child. So
he uses it as an opportunity to bring up Una and make sure that Kate knows about Una.
Yeah. Is he doing that on purpose to like try and dissuade her from her feelings for Lymond? It's like, he's really not a great guy because this is the shit that he's been up to. That's
I totally think so. Like, I think he's trying to be like, hey, he was with this woman who was with these two other guys, and this is the kind of, and like he went out to Malta and they saw each other again, you know. It's just like gossip. And
when we already had at the very beginning of the book, we know that thinking about Una kind of hurts Kate because Kate has something of a little crush on Lymond.
Yeah. Also, we do get this line about Philippa saying how nice. First of all, I think we get a little glimpse of how Philippa doesn't like Joleta also here. She's like, Philippa's eyes are suddenly shining. How nice, she said genteelly. If your sister and Mr. Crawford were married, love often begins with a show of hate, doesn't it? There's like, oh, Philippa. But also, I think she doesn't like either of them, so she's like, they should get married.
Let's have them get married and get out of my hair.
Yeah, exactly. Interestingly, Kate, before she has this moment where she's thinking about Gideon, and I feel like actually this thought about Gideon kind of springs from this moment where she thinks about, she says, Gabriel's talking to Margaret and comforting her, and she says Margaret could not be in better hands at this moment. She only wished his spell was less powerful where Philippa was concerned. She faced then, and then she just thinks about like Gideon has died. I mean, Gideon has died. Too many names are similar. But this little moment of like, she wishes that Gabriel's spell was less powerful where Philippa was concerned. That struck me as ominous. Like, is is this going to be a problem going forward into the book, that Philippa is somehow under the spell of Gabriel?
Well, and it's interesting because the next line is, she then faced drearily the fact that her own motives for this were heavily prejudiced, meaning she prefers Lyman to Gabriel. And so she doesn't want Philippa connected with Gabriel because that's like in opposition to Lyman in a way.
Yeah. And further, the fact that sometimes now she was able to forget that Philippa's father was dead.
Which is, I think, also telling us that she's got this hint of attraction to Lyman, and then she feels guilty because Gideon.
Yeah, sometimes she forgets to be sad, and then she remembers and is sad, you know, which is like, that's how grief works. Like, you know, yeah.
So then on page 296, we get what I was talking about earlier. Kate says, on the whole, I feel that he would be far more likely to bend his brilliant mind to seducing Joleta. Gabriel says, no man living could dishonor my sister. I believe in Joleta as I believe in the fount of my faith. But I would give her in marriage to this one man, if he asked it, provided that he brought as his marriage portion his new-made army, a holy instrument from Mother Church. Interesting.
Well, also interesting in this is he's like, Joleta's been there a while. This was before Lyman even had an army. So is it really the army that he wants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
saying this,
that statement is ridiculous. No man living could dishonor my sister. I believe in Joleta as I believe in the fount of my faith. That's ridiculous. Like, I mean, first of all, it doesn't matter how like morally upright she is. History is full of men dishonoring women who don't choose to be dishonored. Like, the fact that he thinks that she's somehow immune to being like coerced, or like, what? So yeah, ridiculous.
And it's the same holy faith that lets him believe that she's a saint, that also lets him believe that the Turks are purely evil and all deserve to die.
Yeah.
It's not realistic thinking. It's a kind of like magical thinking.
Yeah. But I'm also curious if this is a show that he's putting on for other people, or if this is what he really thinks. And I don't know. I can't figure it out yet. Like, does he genuinely think that his sister is a saint? Or is he well aware that his sister is terrible and is just, they put on a front together of how, like, is he horrible and she's horrible and they're horrible together, and they have some sort of, you know, Machiavellian plan of some sort, and they're putting on this front for the world? Or is she terrible and he's kind of terrible separately, but they have this like weird vision of each other that's really saintly?
I think he probably knows she's rotten to the core.
Yeah.
How could he not?
Right. That's what I think.
One of the things I think, keep going.
I just think they've got some sort of, I think it would be super interesting if they had some sort of like plan that they're both in league to do something. And don't ask me what that is, because I don't know, but I think it would be interesting.
And one of the things I think is interesting is that a lot of Gabriel's kind of proclamations and the things that he says are they're building upon and using the tropes of the society that they're in. Like, they're in this very Christian world, and they've got this image of the Virgin Mary and, you know, this holy woman kind of thing. And they've also got this image of like, you know, Islam is evil and we are good. And so when he makes these like grand speeches declaring these things that are, like, when you deconstruct it, not very realistic, he's using things that have a huge amount of power in like the consciousness of the society that he's in. And so people, especially people like Jarrett, are not going to question him because he's reinforcing and using these things that they have been taught they should believe in and that it's right to believe in them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's Gabriel plays on these images and just like commonly held tropes of the way life works. And Lyman's the opposite, right? Like he's always saying stuff that goes against the societal norms, and he's violating societal norms all the time, and people do the same thing. Like when Lyman violates societal norms and hangs out at a brothel or just whatever, there's immediate judgment no matter his moral center. Like that doesn't matter. And the same goes for Gabriel. There's immediate judgment no matter his moral center, but it's a judgment in a positive light because he's playing into all of those positive tropes. Yeah.
It's like going with the surface rather than the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who's really got the moral core?
Yeah.
I want to make comparisons to the Untamed, but no one watching this knows what that is.
We could talk about it later. I do actually think, first of all, y'all should watch The Untamed. Second of all, so many similarities between Lyman and Wei-Wei, like so many, because it's just there's like the way that both of these characters have such a snarky interaction with the world in ways that harm them. Like they both have this, like I said before, like Lyman interacts with the world in this very sarcastic, kind of shields up sort of verbally way, and it pushes people away and they don't help him. And
he's not afraid to deconstruct the failings of the society. He's not going to respect that it's a norm to think whatever. He's just going to
nope,
super logically and ethically be like, okay, but actually you're hurting people and this is wrong.
Yeah, don't do this. Yeah. Or this traditional thing that we do is stupid and I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, if you haven't watched The Untamed, I'm going to put a link to it in the video description because it's like the best thing ever. And it's like all the same tropes as the Lyman books. It's wonderful.
Yeah. You have to get to at least like episode 10 though. I feel like everyone should want, like, don't judge it on the first couple episodes.
No, the first 2 episodes in particular are quite rough to get through. That was my personal experience with it.
But there's 50, so don't worry. There's much.
Yeah, right. Yes. The first, 25th of the story is hard to get through, but the rest of it's good.
Right, should we move on to the Axis?
Yeah. Let's come back into Lyman land.
Lyman.
So the axe is fashioned. Jarrett joins Lyman at St. Mary's over the winter, and we sort of get an in-depth look at life in the camp. So we get this brilliant description of everything that Lyman has done beforehand to set it up. And Jarrett sort of has this glimpse of something more in Lyman that he missed throughout his whole encounter with him in Malta. On that first night that he and some of the other men are there, there's an alarm at midnight, and Lyman sort of gathers them and sort of gives them his ultimatums as to how this army is going to work, that he's the ultimate leader, and that some other things. Sorry, I didn't take great notes.
It's 2 things. One is that they're going to intervene and help Scotland sometimes, even if they're not going to make a lot of money for it. And then the other one is we may have tons of discussions beforehand, but like in the moment of decision, I am the decider.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think the key part of that is not that he's the decider, which would be typical for any mercenary group or anything like that. The leader's the decider. It's the fact that he's allowing discussion beforehand, which is super different and probably revolutionary. And they all, like, Jared actually sees the entire group like calm down. Like they're super annoyed that he woke them up in the middle of the night, and he's like, well, this is the only time we're going to do this without discussion. And everyone was like, oh, okay. And they kind of all got less annoyed.
It's really interesting that when the alarm goes off, Jared actually thinks the Turks are attacking until he realizes he's in St. Mary's. He's like,
every single character has PTSD.
Absolutely.
Sorry, like all of them.
So anybody that sort of has a problem with Lyman's ultimate decision will be expelled from the fighting force. And then at the end of that little meeting, Archie releases 250 horses, and their first task, sort of as a group, is to round them all up before dawn of the next day.
She really builds up this St. Mary's thing. She says, while a legend was born, and then she says, the task force which was to become famous in Europe. So we're getting this idea of St. Mary's as some kind of legendary thing that this is the start of.
Yeah.
Is this a real fighting force that was historically accurate, or is this, okay,
No.
this is fabrication for the book?
Yeah. All of the people in it have to be made up, right? All of these, like,
yeah, so we get,
yeah, they wouldn't be in it in real life.
We get on 301 the intros to the, I think it's 8 like officers.
Yeah.
Just bookmark 301 because they keep doing stuff, and I always have to keep going back and be like, wait, which one's that again?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all fictional. And it's an interesting combination of people, actually. You know, you got like a lawyer and a surgeon, a lecturer, a antiquarian, a painter. Like, why is Lyman pulling together these particular people?
Yeah. It feels like this is more than just a group that is going to, like, okay, so the modern image that I had was something like Mission Impossible, you know, where he's pulling together a group of people that have all of these disparate skills, that all of them are good soldiers, like, that's true, you know, and they're going to do all of this practice and they're going to be a great army, but they also have these disparate skills that would allow them to, like, move through Europe and solve problems that aren't necessarily solved by a fighting force. And I think that's intriguing.
So I'm looking back through the character list in the beginning, and it does look like everybody is fictional except for the 2 members that are also members of the Knights, and that would be Michael de Sueur and Desroches. Where's his name?
Serving Brother Desroches.
Yeah, the Desroches, the guy who defended the Châtelet in the attack on Tripoli. So those are historical people.
I suspect, although I have never researched this, I would guess that maybe there's no historical record of them after that, and so she could do what she wanted with them.
Yeah.
Because obviously there was no St. Mary's for real.
Right. Yep.
But so then also, I think it's important that he says, we are to become the strongest independent fighting unit these islands have ever known. So this, again, is straight back to Queen's Play and his whole, I don't want to be tied to a leader whose ethics may not align with mine. And then his 2 conditions: we police and protect this nation as best we may. And that you're free to challenge me, but the final decision is mine. And once I have given my orders, so they're allowed to disagree, but once he's given the orders, they have to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Or they get kicked out.
Which, insubordination is the thing you'll get kicked out for, which makes sense.
Yeah. I love his response to Plumber, who says, like, what if we dispose you and go somewhere sunny? And he basically says, like, well, you do that, you're going to hell. He says, like, you will certainly qualify for a trip somewhere sunny, or even merely somewhere uncommonly hot. Like, no, don't try that. So
I like how he says, like, I will learn all of your intricacies in the next couple months, but I can assure you, you will not know mine.
Yeah. I also like too when he's appealing to, like, their you know, greed, in the sense that they're going to make a lot of money. This is going to be a fighting force that will make some money. But he also says that they're actually, he kind of like, well, we may not get paid all that much, but we're going to create a better future. And so in addition to appealing to their sort of inner selfishness or whatever, he's also appealing to their sense of altruism, and that they're gonna, he says, to your sons and grandsons, the effects, if we do our work worthily, should be worth their measure in gold. So
he's already undercutting his whole, we're just doing this for money.
Right, yeah. It's like, no, I don't think so.
It's Lyman. Yeah. Do you want to talk about when Richard shows up and tells Lyman that he frightens him silly?
Yeah, I mean, that's the next little section.
Yeah.
Was there anything else we wanted to talk about in this beginning, or?
Well, also just that we get another little sign of Lyman saying one thing and doing the other when he sends them all out on this thing, and he's like, well, I'm going to bed, and then he absolutely doesn't go to bed. And so it's kind of like he just so often does like little things that piss people off, and it's not like he doesn't know that's gonna irritate people, but he just says it and then doesn't follow through. So his actions, I think, goes back, Laura, to like, you always just have to look at what he does instead of what he says. And yeah.
The other thing I find interesting in this section is knowing what happens later, seeing what gets set up here. So I'm curious what you guys think is being set up here.
Well, you mean in this evening catch the horses thing, or in the whole?
No, I mean in the rules that he gives them, in the way he sets up the group, and he tells them basically there's 2 rules. We're going to police Scotland, and I have the final decision. We're going to discuss, but I have the final decision.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed pretty normal to me. I as soon as I heard he was setting up an army and he said like that those are the rules, I was like, well, sure. What other rules would there be? Like, what do you mean by setting something up? Like, it seemed completely, that seems like the obvious answer.
At some point, someone is going to have insubordination.
Mm.
He's just set up. This is the thing that is.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that would happen with any fighting force. Like, if the leader of a fighting force is your main character, somebody's going to be insubordinate. Like, that's just gonna happen.
But and they've all agreed. And the other thing is they've all agreed to it. They've all agreed. Yes, you have the final decision. We'll go with it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, now I think the question is it just Jarrett, or is it people in addition to Jarrett?
I do like, though, that Jarrett is enjoying himself here.
He is.
Like, he didn't think that he would, but like at the top of page 307, when Lyman asks, like, did you have fun rounding up these horses? Imbecile question. Jarrett Blythe opened his mouth to answer it as it is deserved, then was struck, as many times before in his life, by a crazy discovery. Yes, he said. He didn't even realize he was having fun until that moment. So,
right. Yeah, I love it. He's like, oh, wait, I did have a lot of fun. I also like, so this evening thing where he sent them out, that it wasn't necessarily an exercise in rounding up horses. It was an exercise in diplomacy, and like, how do you get what you want away from people without making them angry? Like, they had to go out in the countryside and get all these horses back, which I thought was an interesting exercise.
And they all had to work together, even though they just met each other for the most part.
Yeah, like they set up a command station and everything. So
yeah, and then at the end, Lyman like deconstructs their entire process in a way that they said was both nasty and hilarious. So you can just imagine Lyman like just peeling them, like just ripping them off one side or the other about how their tactics were so terrible, but also making them laugh at the same time, and like building community, and like probably treating everyone, he's probably like insulting and complimenting everyone equally, and, you know, building that camaraderie. And
I think he wins. Like, remember how he won people over? He won his men over in Game of Kings, even though he was so sharp-tongued, because he's also so charismatic and competent. He's definitely got that capability. He's pulling it out here.
Yeah. So then in this next little section, Richard shows up, and they talk. And this is where Richard says how much he frightens him. I can't read my writing. Oh, Lyman also has a discussion with Will Scott, because Will and Watt Scott show up at this point. He asks him to end the feud with the curse. It's like, stop. It's getting you nowhere. We need to work together as Scotland. And then Watt comes in and tells this lovely tale about how Sibylla has been sort of messing with Madame Donati and telling her that there's this really awful person, and they told Madame Donati he was rich, and now she's like trying to woo him, which
but the reason behind that is important. Like, it's because Madame Donati implied that there's this, you know, Sibylla has illegitimate children, and I'm like, oh,
Yes, Madame Donati, I think, did not realize that Sibylla spoke Italian as well.
yeah.
It's a very interesting line. It was the old story. She thought you and I were remarkably unlike. There's a couple things here. One, it's the old story, meaning they've heard this a lot.
Yeah.
And the other is we don't know which one is implied as being illegitimate. We just know that there's an implication that one of them is, because
They have different fathers.
yeah.
Richard and
Remember how intensely Lyman reacted to that suggestion. That's when he lost it and knocked out Robin Stewart.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. I also found it interesting. There was this whole section about language and how language is so important to Lyman, that the men speak multiple languages and that he sort of forces them to learn multiple languages, and they'll bring in interpreters. Like anytime he's bringing in all these outside experts that speak lots of different languages, which is fascinating. So they're coming from all over, and they provide an interpreter for like a month or so, but then the men are expected to be able to speak. So they're getting crash courses in a whole bunch of languages,
Mhm.
and they're expected to be able to sort of wander around Europe and speak to anyone, which is impressive.
And like it says that Sala Blanca, who's also there, is speaking Spanish the whole time he's there. So
Yeah.
just to go hand in hand with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to contrast it with the knights, right? Because they're so kind of like decrepit in their leadership and isolated. And then here it's like Lyman is he kind of like went to the knights and he was like, okay, I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah. Like the knights are all, they're isolated. Like all the French guys stay together, all the Spanish guys stay together, all they don't, and they form all these factions. And so Lyman's sort of like defactionized his army.
And their grandmaster is this guy who like rose through the ranks as like a priest basically, and just ended up in this position of power that he's not qualified for. Whereas here, Lyman is bringing like super qualified people from all these different areas. I also enjoyed Lyman sending away the Queen Dowager's gifts because it might be inconvenient to have to pay for them today.
Yep. Which, smart. Unless he insults her when he sends him back, which not good.
I was a little, I mean, I know historically speaking, there's a reason why she did this, but I was a little confused as to why Will Scott isn't part of this army. I mean, obviously because in real life he wasn't, but.
Well, he's got some responsibilities.
Yeah, he's the heir to Buccleuch, so he's got like same thing. Like Richard couldn't join this army. People who are the heir, they can't just go join an army.
Right, and if he left Buccleuch, like his father would be the one making decisions, and clearly that would not be good for the area. So
I still think he would have been a good student.
Oh, he would have loved it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he has to, keep up with his responsibilities, even though he, I'm sure, would rather just go play with Lyman, have adventures. There's also a really funny line where Watt says, "Isn't Sibylla a wee love of a bitch?" And Lyman says, "Say the nicest things about my mother."
Yeah, and you know that Watt is just being like Watt, like he's not. He didn't really mean anything bad by it. I love the way that Watt talks about Janet, his wife. She seems to really have him in hand.
Oh yeah. Same way Griselle has Bill in hand.
Yeah. Oh.
Should we move to the next section?
Sure. So this is, oh boy. So first of all, Jarrett, it describes how he's enjoyed actually his time here working with Lyman, which I have a question about this. We'll get to when we discuss it further. He sees Tosh and recognizes immediately and has realized that he's been being followed by Tosh throughout France way back before everything that happened on Malta, and puts it together that sort of Lyman has had his mark on Jarrett to sort of recruit him for this for quite a while now.
Wait, is it before Malta or after Malta? I thought he was following him in the journey from Malta to Scotland.
Yeah, it's after Malta.
Oh,
It's after
never
Malta.
mind. So after Malta, like I said. Sorry, I thought it was beforehand. What else happens?
Yeah, no, I think Lyman has just sent out feelers to people like post Malta as they were all traveling through France separately. Like he was just keeping tabs on people.
I thought that Lymond and Jarrett had mostly traveled together, but I guess I'm mistaken.
So
Apparently not.
So Margaret has been, since she found out that Tom is dead, has sort of been living at Midcoulter instead of Boghall, probably because she doesn't really like her mother all that much, Lady Jenny, who's still manipulative and evil, and she's trying to get back in the good graces of the king so she can have a second illegitimate child with him.
I love this throwaway line where it's like Jenny felt sometimes that her daughter preferred Sibylla's company to her own. It's just like, yeah, she does.
I don't think she's evil. She's just as selfish.
Yeah, she's immature and selfish. And
so Lyman goes to visit Boghall on the same day that Joleta is there, and Jenny sort of manipulates the two of them to be alone in a room together, and that's when he sort of chastises her for what she's been doing with the baby. Like, you got Kevin drunk, that's not cool. And then Joleta goes absolutely apeshit and says, "You do not tell me what to do," and tries to attack him, which causes a big blowout fight. They ruin the room. Joleta reaches for his sword. Up until this point, he was just sort of trying to stop her. But as soon as she reaches for his sword, he's like, "I'm going to have to hurt you now, so please don't do that." And she does anyway, and then he knocks her down. Jarrett comes to the rescue. He obviously thinks that Lyman has been the instigator of this whole thing. So even though he's been enjoying his time, we see him immediately revert to his hatred for Lyman. And yeah, that's just, that whole fight scene with them is, it's a thing.
It's pretty intense.
It is very intense. It goes from like 0 to 100 just like that. And it's all her.
yeah, it's all her.
All
like,
her.
He's trying to de-escalate it. Like, I mean, he you know, he defends himself when he gets attacked, but he's not. He's trying not to hurt her.
He's definitely trying not to hurt her. He threatens her verbally. He kind of, he tells her off for getting Kevin drunk, and then he says if she does it again, she'll get a thrashing. And that infuriates her. And she says, "I shall do what I like when I please."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Joleta.
Whoa. And I also love the thing that he says when Margaret warns. By the way, you can tell that Margaret sees through Joleta too. Like, because she's like, "Francis, I'm sorry, but Joleta's here in the castle." Like, sorry. And he says, "Little girls are always throwing down gauntlets, or worse, I don't have to pick them up." You know, and it's just this, he knows what she's doing and he's not going to respond to it, and all of that. So
I think it's also, Lyman doesn't do himself any favors when Jarrett bursts in and Lyman says, "Calm down, will you? One adolescent at a time is quite enough."
Yeah.
yeah, especially if you're the same age and Jarrett knows that.
Yeah. And then he goes on the whole thing about, "I may add that Friday is my day for raping, and I like it quieter than this," and they enjoy it. Like, you are not getting Jarrett on your side here, dude.
Not at all.
No. It's, yeah. And it's what he says, what Lyman says about Joleta. He says, "You are a violent, self-willed, well-shaped, and dangerous creature, and I prefer your honest rages to your parlor archery." And I just think that's like a violent, well-shaped, dangerous creature. Violent, self-willed, well-shaped, dangerous creature is just her. And
notably, Joleta doesn't sort of play the victim and go, "Oh, Jarrett, he attacked me." She's basically like, "Jarrett, go away." Why did she do that? What's her goal here?
I was curious about that because it seemed like she could totally play the like, oh, helpless me card and, you know, totally just act pathetic and get Jarrett completely, just wind Jarrett around her finger. But she doesn't seem to be interested in doing that. So
I think that might put a permanent wall between her and Lyman, and she's still trying to produce him, maybe?
maybe
Get somewhere.
she's not being very smart about it. It's like she's so malicious, and her, like, is it her immaturity that is her malicious instincts are taking over her desire to get in with, because if she wanted to get in with Lyman, like getting his baby nephew drunk was dumb. Like it wasn't just mean, it was dumb. And so it makes me feel like she's not as savvy as, I don't know. She just doesn't seem very savvy. And she loses her temper. And
this is also probably the first time in her entire life that a man has seen her and not immediately swooned with how beautiful and wonderful and innocent and pure she is.
yeah. She doesn't know how to get her own way if they don't just fall at her feet. Yeah.
She's really just the worst.
Yeah, the worst.
And then Lyman calls her a spoiled brat in the next section. He definitely sees what she is.
To the point where like she tries to pull his sword out. Like, and he didn't hit her because he was trying to protect himself. He was still trying to protect her. It's like, I'm going to have to hurt you because if you pull that sword out, you're probably going to stab yourself with it accidentally.
Well, and she's breaking things and grabbing glass and like cutting herself. Like,
yeah. And none of it is hers. This is all Lady Jenny stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh, but that is interested. She makes it seem at the end like she's going to tell Lady Jenny that it was all Lyman, like trying to be. Where is the exact line?
Oh, he says who was going to explain to Lady Jenny.
Oh, yeah.
And she says no explanations necessary. She'll think it must be Friday. She'll be furious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we know Lady Jenny isn't the most stand-up character either.
No. Well, and yeah, she's just gonna believe, who knows. But I think Lyman is savvy enough to not let Joleta spread rumors about him, I hope.
Well, he makes a big thing, right? He even says, I think to Margaret, I have troubles enough without my name being linked with Gabriel's sister.
Yeah.
So he's trying to avoid her and to make it very clear that he's not interested.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and obviously the whole thing with Kevin is known. Like, I forgot who told him.
I don't know if we know.
I'm a little surprised that Sibylla knows of this, and as soon as she found that out, was instantly like, out, not in my house, like go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, but she put up with that kind of behavior.
Margaret Erskine removed her from Mid-Coulter because of her pranks. So it was
It could have been because Sibylla asked Margaret to come and take her.
Yeah.
I mean, or it could have been that Margaret saw it happening and was like, I'm getting her out of here.
Yeah.
Before she speeds the baby poison.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So anyway, all that to say, I feel like other people are well aware that Sibylla or that Joleta is malicious. So it's not like this pure innocent girl's word against Lyman's word.
It's all the women, by the way, who can see through Joleta, and the men who are like, she's so pure and beautiful.
Except for Lyman. It's like Lyman and the women. Yeah. And then Graham shows up.
Right at the end. On the very day that she attacked Lyman, the brother shows up. So very interesting. And I'm curious as to what will happen when he finds out.
Yeah. And I love that his eyes lit with pleasure rested on Francis Crawford alone. And you're like, okay.
This is one of my favorite bits in the entire Lyman Chronicles is this, where Gabriel shows up, tall, quiet, authority, stillness. Clear skin, big featured face, good hands, bare golden head. His eyes lit with pleasure rested on Francis Crawford alone. It was Sir Graham Reed Mallet. Overcome, Randy Bell vomited. I just love it.
Like, whoa.
And then, of course, Lyman's, oh God, quite. Christendom has caught up with us. My mistake. We are a heavenly host in our ships, which echoes something he said a couple lines earlier.
Yep. I'm just like, okay, we know Randy is like hungover and he's not vomiting because of Gabriel's holiness, but the way she juxtaposes the sentence is like, it kind of is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, I see Gabriel and sometimes I want to vomit too. So I get you, Randy Bell.
Yeah. That's what happens when you see him.
So what do you guys think? Gabriel's here. What's going to happen?
Oh, Lord. I think it just depends. Like, it just depends on what he wants, which I don't think we know. I don't know what he wants. Like, what's he trying to do here?
I mean, if he was telling Kate the truth, then his motivations are to get Lyman to marry Joleta so he can steal his army for the Mother Church.
I mean,
for the Mother Church, though.
I can see that he wants to steal his army, but he didn't send Joleta here for that because the army didn't exist, like Laura said earlier. So there's got to be another plan too.
But he did send Jared Blythe there, who I think totally, as soon as Gabriel asked him what's been going on, would just tell him everything.
Oh, spill the beans, 100%. Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't know. Like, because
Jared is very easy manipulated by Gabriel. So.
For sure. Yeah, it just, what are Gabriel and Joleta up to? I don't know. I don't think we know, or at least I haven't figured it out yet. And is he going back to the Knights? Is his plan still involving the Knights somehow, or is that just done with and now we're in Scotland doing stuff? Like, I don't know. Historical question. Do the Knights stay on Malta? Do they lose Malta because of this?
They stay on Malta after this. The Great Siege of Malta is like
a couple years away.
Years later, I think, something like that.
In the 1560s, I think.
Yeah. Led by Jean de la Valette.
Because Dahomedix is still technically around, though, right? Or does
he is now. He is now. He's still in charge now. But in 10 years, Jean de Valette is a leader, and he's a good leader, and he saves Malta. It's a famous siege. You can read all kinds of books about it.
Oh,
that's why they renamed that area of the city Valletta.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So, do they still exist?
They do. Okay. Yeah, in a different form.
Yeah.
Probably like
a lot of those orders are still around.
Yeah, they're not on Malta anymore, I don't think, but they still exist.
Okay. I wonder if they still run hospitals.
I feel like they do. I don't know.
I mean, it's
like a legitimate 21st century thing to do, especially now. Yeah. So I have no idea what Gabriel and Joleta are doing, which is driving me a little crazy.
I'm sure they're up to no good, though.
They're up to no good.
Yes. I'm no longer on the fence. Gabriel is evil. I just don't know how evil he is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, same.
And his rotten little sister.
Like, is he just selfish? Is he moderately evil? Is he super evil? Like,
power hungry? Is he trying to usurp somebody? I don't know either.
Yeah. How ambitious is he? Is he like, I want to be moderately powerful and comfortable ambitious? Or is he like, I want to rule the world ambitious? Like,
is he actually,
there's a lot of room in between there. So.
Is he actually holy, or is it all just an act?
Yeah.
Does he believe what he says?
Yeah. Does he believe what he says? Is he deliberately lying and manipulating people? Or is he fooling himself? Like, is he saying this stuff and lying to himself? Or does he genuinely believe some of it? I think it's option 1 or 2. I don't think it's 3.
Yeah. I think it would have been interesting to have him be in the book as sort of like a mentor to Lymond, but we're clearly well past that state. Like, that's not an option any longer.
But there is some interesting stuff where like Sibylla's thinking he needs some sort of more solid relationship. So it's like he needs something some people think Gabriel could be what he needs, but
like I would love to see a character like that for Lyman. I would love to see there be like an older man, like significantly older man, like in his, 50s or 60s or something, who mentors and cares for Lyman in some way, like have a father figure, because he never had one. He didn't have, his father was so terrible, and I'd love to see him actually have a father figure, but he may just be past that. Like it may not be.
Yeah.
I think the closest he had to a father figure was Richard.
Richard, right. Which was not fair to Richard, honestly. Like to expect him to be the father for his brother who's not that much younger than him. Like that's not fair. And he didn't do a good job of it because he was also a kid. So, yeah.
Any other thoughts on these chapters or what's going to happen next?
I'm just really intrigued by these mysteries, and I'm going to go back and reread that bit earlier to see if I have any more thoughts on it. Who knows? Maybe they'll get solved in the next section we read. So
yeah. So how many mysteries do we have? We've got, what is the secret that Tom said on his deathbed? What is Joleta and Gabriel's plan? What are they doing?
Who killed Trotty Luckup?
Right, which is connected to the secret.
Yeah.
Do we have any more big mysteries we're trying to figure out?
What are Gabriel's motivations, and what exactly is Lyman trying to do with the army, I guess?
Yeah, what decision did Lyman take in the tent?
Right. What decision did Lyman take in the tent? So there's really those three. It's what is the secret and who killed Trotty? What are Gabriel and Joleta up to? And what decision did Lyman make back in the tent?
Well, I guess we could say also, whose baby is Una carrying?
No.
Come on, that ain't no mystery.
That is not a mystery.
What if it's neither Cormac's or Lyman's?
What if she immaculately conceived?
Yeah.
No.
Only Joleta would do that.
Look at Zeus. He is a horny bastard.
That's true. We could mix our mythologies. All right.
We good?
Yeah.
I think we're good.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.